Hey guys, it's Miss P. I'm here this first step to just talk to you a little bit about what kinds of materials you'll need for watercolor painting. And I know all of you don't have this at home, but we're going to go over it. Anyway, I'm starting off with a book. I have a couple books. There's some at school. This one's my personal book. I just really like it. It tells you the basics that you need for watercolor. It's really great. It talks about why watercolor, how it differs from acrylic paint, how it differs from oil paints, and then it gives you like step by step like what kinds of techniques they use to get those effects in the picture. So it's really neat. I mean, even if you're an expert, it's still really good to look and go, oh, I wonder how they got that kind of pattern. Was that a wet on wet effect? Was that wet on dry? Was that spattering? So anyways, it does that. And then it says before you start, talk about what kinds of paints there are here. So in your kit, you received what's called the semi-moist watercolor kit, which basically these are like pucks or pans is what they call them. They say it's semi-moist because it's not chalky hard, dry, but you always have to add water to it. And you can use the tray, the lid, as a mixing tray or a palette over here, which I will go over later. There's also an option to get watercolor tubes. So you can purchase a set of watercolor tubes like this, and they kind of look like acrylic paint when you squeeze them out. And trust me, you need very, very, very little paint. Watercolor goes a very long way. You squeeze it out into maybe a different palette here. You can squeeze some of the paint into one of these wells in the palette. Let's say you put a little bit of blue there, and then you have a lighter blue, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. Basically, how do you get your paints lighter is you add more water. So you can mix up a few colors at a time in here, and then you can always close up your lid and save them. So the great things about watercolors is you don't have to wash the palette and start all over again, because those paints are always usable just by adding water, even if they dry out. Okay, so there you have the paints, and we're going to talk about brushes as well. Sometimes in a kit like this, you will receive a brush already. It's usually a small round brush, and it is. So it comes with a little plastic thing. You take that off, and it's a nice point to it. You'll feel that it's very, very stiff. At this time, you can either just kind of break it up with your fingers, or once you put it in the water, and then reshape it with your fingers. They put the glue or some kind of stiffener in there so that the brush holds its shape over shipping. Don't ever put it back on here or you'll hurt the bristles, so I just usually ditch that when I'm done. Okay? Some of you received brushes that are this color with your art kit from Curry's. Some of you received a paint brush kit like this, and made of talcum. And so a lot of the brushes that you see are made of, if they're orange like this, that means they're made of sable. So this is really a more expensive brush. This is like a professional grade brush here. This is made with sable hair. So usually when you, sometimes the synthetic ones are orange as well. But these here work really great. I got this package a couple years ago. I haven't even used them yet at Hobby Lobby in the States. You get this set of all these different shapes for $13.99. So the three main brushes you need in a kit, you should have some kind of a flat. This is an angle, but these are all flats. Okay, this is a filbert. You don't have to have that, but if you have a flat or an angle and a round and a smaller round, you should be just fine. Okay, the other things that you may need, make sure that you have an eraser, because you're probably going to be sketching some things. So eraser that came with your kit. You also might want to get your Sharpie ready, because I'm going to show you a couple techniques with that. So we'll put some of this to the side there. And if you purchase the kit, you probably have this sketchbook at home. And I purposely purchased these for you because it's mixed media. So you can use acrylic, watercolor, pen, and pencil. So it's very versatile. So I like that. But better than this paper, because it's not the best, is if you get watercolor paper. Now you could buy watercolor pads, or you can just have pieces of paper. I actually brought some paper from school just today. Here's a watercolor paper. You'll see that it's got kind of like a texture on it. On the other side is a little bit different of a texture. And what you want to do, which side do you use? Well, if you put it up to the window and you look through, and if you can see a watermark and you can read that, then that's the side you paint on, okay? So I took one of the sheets and I cut it in half, but you can chop these up, but it might even be better for you as a student to purchase watercolor pads. Now, they talk about watercolor paper in weights, so you might hear about like in how many pounds it is. Like a 200-pound watercolor paper is fabulous. There's no need to stretch it or anything. So what you want to do is, sorry about that. What you want to do is stay away from really low pound numbers. So, you know, like 90 is okay. Like this is 98 pounds in your sketchbook, so that's pretty good. So the watercolor paper I was showing you here is more like 150 or something like that. So when we talk about stretching it, sometimes what we do is we tape it to a board, because as you know, watercolor paper, when it gets saturated, it tends to ripple. So you might want, the heavier the watercolor paper, the less chance it will ripple. It probably will ripple in here, and that's okay. All right, so you're also going to need water. All right, so I just have a jar of water here, and have your brushes ready to go, have your paints ready to go, have paper towel ready to go. So those are the things you're going to want to have to just get ready to start painting. You may also have little things like maybe a sponge. We're going to do something with a sponge. Extra pieces of paper towel that we'll use as tools to blot and lift our color. And what else might you need here? I thought I had everything out. You're probably going to want to have like a toothbrush. If you get a toothbrush, we're going to use that as a tool. And also, you maybe a white crayon. If you have a white crayon at home laying around, or an oil pastel, that would be awesome. So here I have an oil pastel. I'm going to show you a technique with that. And I also, none of you probably have this laying around at home, but this is Frisket or masking fluid, and I will be talking about that as well. So those are some of the materials that you're going to need for the watercolor lesson. We'll be back for our first lesson in just a minute.